Oh, ah,
Is this the lip readers? Yes.
he
Okay.
lives and breathes.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Yeah, I was. That's weird. I was on just a little bit earlier, but do I sound okay? Is my level fine?
Yeah, you sound fine. How you
Okay.
doing, Mitch?
I am doing really well. I was actually talking about your podcast earlier today. I was driving myself to a Comic-Con that isn't until next week, and which is kind of embarrassing. But I was listening. I always have podcasts queued up, and I was listening to the Sci-Fi movie podcast. Star Trek 3 was the episode I was listening to, and I was probably about 10 minutes in. I always, 3 is one of those I have a little bit of trouble remembering exactly which one it is, and then it's okay. It's, I know it's the Search for Spock. Now, is that the first one that Leonard Nimoy directed? I know he had directed another film, something with Liam Neeson.
I think it was the first one that he directed. I'd have to go check the IMDb. If I had my smart guys here, Ian and Jonathan, they'd probably be able to tell me. But I do seem to recall it was the first one that Leonard Nimoy had directed. What did you think of it?
I enjoyed the podcast, but I'm only about 10 minutes in. The movie I really liked. It was Star Trek 4, though, that really, it's the whole thing, the odd numbered, as you guys were talking about. Like I said, I haven't heard the whole thing. And now, was that the one with his girlfriend or ex-wife where she says, "Can I cook or can I cook?" When they put the when they rehab the planet, I'm using the wrong terminology. He finds out he has a son. So little bits of it are coming back to me. I guess I have not seen that one in quite a while. Star Trek 2 and 4 are the two that I tend to go back to.
Yeah, and if I remember correctly, they're on this planet and they're in this place where there's underground, and it does seem like they've got all the food that they need. But I'm with you. I know 2 a little bit better, but I know 4 the best.
4
and a lot of the Star Trek fans really kind of dump on it, and I love to say it's the one with the whales.
Yes,
it drives Trek people nuts.
Yeah, but it's something I saw that in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, when it opened. And as I recall, the projector had there's a heat shield or something apparently for film projectors to keep them from overheating. And so it engaged that heat shield. And so it was dim. It was really dark. It was really.
That sounds very Trekky in and of itself.
Yeah. And I kept thinking, I didn't realize at the time, I go, why is this film so dark? And I realized it was a problem with the projector about halfway through. So we went, as I recall, and talked to the manager and ended up sitting through it a second time. And it just made it was a night and day kind of thing. I'm seeing that I've got Bennett Litwin on the other line. He hasn't come on yet. I don't know if I'd mentioned this to you. Bennett is a filmmaker here in the Dallas area. He is doing a feature-length science fiction film, and it's called Frackers, which you might change.
Is this the one that's being shot at your place? I think I've seen some of your pictures on Twitter.
I have posted some pictures. A few months ago, they shot a trailer, which I was an extra in, and I shot a bunch of location pictures. And so when I tweet about that project, I try to include a picture from when I was out there, because it was really cool. I mean, they've got a real director of photography. They've got a real sound guy. They've got the boom. They've got, all that stuff going on. Lovely actresses, handsome actors, gratuitous nudity, all the things you look for in a quality film.
I remember seeing the picture you posted, and it was all these people, and then I could see about half of your face.
Exactly.
Your eyes are wide, and you're, hey, look.
That is, I do a lot of photography, and that picture that I have posted has by far been the most liked picture I have ever posted, which is a little bit embarrassing. Yeah, it's a selfie with my iPhone.
It's very well done. Very well done. And your expression is priceless.
It was a lot of fun. I was trying to capture the mood, and I really think I captured it in that. Now, let's get to your show. You've got a podcast, for those of you who don't know. Rem is a co-host of the show or podcast called the Sci-Fi Movie Podcast. Now that comes out on Monday, or what day of the week does that come out? Friday?
We usually release on Tuesdays. If I'm running very late, it might be Wednesday, but we typically shoot for a Tuesday release. And that's based on us recording either on a Saturday or a Sunday night. We're actually recording in about 2 hours for The Martian tonight.
Oh, you're doing that now. Okay.
Yeah, we're going to be doing that in a couple hours. So I've been to see The Martian a few times, and Ian and Jonathan have both seen it. So we really wanted to talk about this movie, still in theaters, and I'll spoil it for you. We're going to suggest that everybody go see this.
Okay, that was actually the question I was getting ready to ask. When you discuss a movie on your show, what is your policy toward spoilers?
If we take an older movie like say The Day the Earth Stood Still, the original, back to the 50s, we're going to spoil it. If a person hasn't seen it by now, that's too damn bad.
Yeah, 60 years. Come on. That's not too sad.
You've had 60 years to watch this movie. What's wrong with you? Now, if a film is newer, like say Prometheus, which we've been just tearing to shreds lately for some reason.
I am loving that. Actually,
we'll,
you guys do that.
We'll spoil that. And what I'm trying to do now, our loose policy is to not spoil anything that's currently in the theater.
Got it.
So
now I was going to mention, it looks like Jason M. Bryant is saying, "What's up?" I don't know if you're looking
Jason.
at are you looking at the comments on the side?
Hey, Jason. How's it going, buddy?
So Rem is a very experienced podcaster. He's a very good podcaster, but he is a blab virgin.
This is my first time.
Oh, Canada.
I just pushed the button and see, you had sent me the link to this, and I was talking to somebody at a networking meeting the other day, and they said, "Hey, let's try blab." And I haven't tried it yet. So it's really great that you did this, because I haven't done it before. I just started pushing buttons and bam, it's pretty cool.
It really is. Now, since my mic was not hooked up properly, I don't know. All I did was re-plug it into the USB port, and it started working. Even though I explained it, there was no audio, but this is called the Sci-Fi Saturday Show. We're going to do this show every Saturday at 8 o'clock Central, 9 o'clock Eastern, and we're going to bring on just whoever wants to talk. I have a podcast called the Sci-Fi Maker Podcast, which is for science fiction creators, which could be someone like Rem, who has a podcast that he produces. And I count that. That is science fiction that people are creating, because what we want to do on that show is encourage people to create more science fiction, to take that step from being a fan to a creator. So I interview filmmakers and artists and animators and musicians, composers, artists, whoever, about how they got started and what kind of advice can they give for someone who might like to do that. Anyway, let's get back to this. A few weeks ago, I had Rem as a guest on the Sci-Fi Maker show.
Indeed. And thank you, Mitch. It was fun. That was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed our conversation.
That really is fun. And I had, now we had met a couple of years ago, well, a year and a half ago, in Dallas at a podcast movement conference. And it took us that long to reconnect, but I've always stayed up with what's been going on with that podcast. And
it's really good that guy, who was the guy who made it his mission to make sure that you and
I want to thank him, and I think I have him as a Facebook. I know who you're talking about.
Yeah.
And I follow his stuff too.
I can't think of who it was, but he said, "It is my mission to make sure that you two meet."
That's exactly what he
weekend.
That is exactly what he told me.
Yeah.
And so I apologize for not remembering your name. I feel really, really bad. Jason says that we've reached our quota of Canucks, so I'm assuming Jason must be Canadian.
No, Jason isn't Canadian.
Oh, so one is the limit?
No, Jason just wishes he was Canadian.
Kyron is in the chat.
Kyron. Hey, Kyron. Kyron is one of my Canadian brethren from Alberta, up in Edmonton.
And where are you? Where are you in Canada?
I'm on the very farthest coast west. I'm as far west as you can go without hitting water, and then Japan. So I'm in Victoria. and Victoria is in British Columbia. The confusing thing that people sometimes confuse is that there's a Vancouver, but there's also a Vancouver Island.
Okay.
And I'm on the island in Victoria at the very tip of the island. So I'm as far west and as far south as you can be without being in the States and without being in water.
I'm embarrassed to say that with all the traveling I've done, that at this late juncture in life, I have still not been to Canada.
Really? That's a shame.
I am embarrassed to say that because I really want to get up there. I have a lot of friends from Canada. Some of them are still there. Most of them are here in the States. Yeah, that's my bad. I will do whatever I can to fix that as soon as I can, because I have a brother who travels quite a bit. He works for American Airlines, and he loves Canada. That's after Europe. Europe's his favorite destination, but Canada is second. I mean, he loves the more cosmopolitan cities in Canada. He just can't say enough about it. And I have to plead, like most Americans, quite a bit of ignorance about Canada. Do you think there's a difference, speaking of science fiction and Canada, that is the science fiction community or culture different in Canada than the United States, do you think?
That's a good question. I know now that the Canada, because of the dollar and that we're becoming something of a third world country, not really, but it's a lot cheaper to shoot here now. So a lot of production going on in Vancouver. I think as far as the level of science fiction, I don't know if you could draw really distinct differences between Canadian and American stuff, because we Canadians love the American science fiction, but we also see that a lot of the American science fiction is actually shot up here. So there is a kind of a nice connectivity there, where you'll take a lot of shows. They say, "Oh, this is in New York." Actually, it's downtown Vancouver, and they shoot here because it's less expensive. So we kind of have a nice connection that way. But as far as drawing a difference between the two, I remember some Canadian sci-fi back in the 80s, which wasn't very good. It was like Canadian music. And I've gone on about this on the podcast about how Canadian music used to be not very well looked upon. And then with some changes in regulations from the CRTC, there was an effort put forward to make sure that we play, yes, Kyron says CanCon. But I think CanCon was actually a really good idea, because it required radio stations to play 1 out of 3 songs had to be a Canadian song. Now, when that kicked in, there was a lot of bad Canadian music, but it did give some airplay to some good bands, gave them a chance to get better and more popular. And now I would stack Canadian music against anything else on the planet. And I think what we need is more of that in the film industry. We need more focus, more emphasis on being able to develop good Canadian content, because we've got the locations, we've got the people. I think there just needs to be a real push to make Canadian TV and film as good as it can be, and make it recognized as being as good as it can be.
Okay, well, you gave us Captain Kirk, right? So
yeah.
That's
James Cameron.
James Cameron. Oh, that's right. He is Canadian.
Yeah,
I had
James
forgotten
Cameron.
that. Wow.
Yeah, quite a few.
Michael J. Fox, Back to the Future, 1, 2, and 3.
What's that?
Michael J. Fox, Back to the Future, 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah, absolutely.
Rush.
Oh, of course.
Of
course.
Which I would consider some of their music to be science fiction. Certainly the stories behind a lot of their songs are science fiction-y. Yeah,
you take the way that Neil Peart, the lyricist for Rush, wrote very interesting stories, especially if you start digging into the story of 2112, which great rock album, but it tells the story of a futuristic society that seems to have arisen after some sort of cataclysm. And the keepers of the knowledge have deemed that things of the past were no longer to be used, like musical instruments. So it's a futuristic society that's trying not to repeat the sins of the past with things like electric guitars. So interesting stuff there. And Rush was way on board, telling some really interesting stories and being fabulous musicians at the same time.
You also have Nickelback. Aren't they Canadian? Please let them be Canadian, because I don't want them to be from the United States.
Okay, I'm gonna give a little bit of defense to Nickelback. Nickelback's out of Vancouver. They were out of Vancouver. Um, Nickelback started out really well. I remember I was working at a station here in Victoria called 100.3 The Q, the Islands Rock. And right around 2000, 2001, they put out some good stuff, and they're a good band. Chad Kroeger, as much crap as he takes, he's a really good lyricist. He's a good writer and he's a good musician. But something happened with their music where they started to get very kind of misogynistic in their music, where a lot of it was sort of talking about women in very unflattering ways. And that's kind of what I've found I didn't like about Nickelback is they've taken their stardom that they've achieved and they've started to put that into their music. If they're doing it as commentary and I'm not getting that, okay, then maybe it's my bad. But a lot of the music that they've done lately, not so thrilled with it. And there's a tendency for Canada and Canadians to eat their own. When somebody gets too popular, and maybe the same thing happens in the States and other places in the world, see Michael Jackson. When somebody gets too popular, well, he was okay. Michael Jackson's about $900,000 worth of counseling waiting to happen, or he was anyway. But I think when somebody gets to a level of popularity, there's a saturation that happens, and then suddenly nobody wants to hear Nickelback. And then you hear radio stations saying, and it's the no Nickelback guarantee. They have done some good stuff, a bit overplayed. Some of their musical tendencies have changed, and I would like them to get back to being good musicians who write smart lyrics and a little less misogynistic.
Okay. Well, let's circle back to your podcast, the Sci-Fi Movie Podcast.
Enough with the Nickelback tirade.
Yes. Well, we could have gone on to Justin Bieber, but we'll leave that alone.
We'll leave that for another Saturday night.
Really leave it behind. What possessed you to do a podcast about science fiction movies?
Science fiction's been a love going back as far as I remember. I was thinking about this the other night. When I was growing up, I grew up in California. Actually, I was born in the States. That should make Jason happy. So I'm not was actually born in the States, and in the San Francisco Bay Area, there was a channel called Channel 7, and they used to play this program called Creature Features. Do you remember growing up when movies used to be hosted? There'd be a host, and he'd tonight on the horror cinema, we're doing, Came from Outer Space.
I'm from Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Okay.
And originally, going back when I was a little kid, there was a television show called Fantastic Theater on Channel 2, the NBC affiliate, with the guy's name. He was from Germany. He worked at the television station. They had a model of a scary looking house, and they would zoom in at the beginning, play scary music. It actually was Dutch electronic music. Kid Balton, a song called Sonic Reentry, which is really more science fiction-y, but 1950s electronic music. It's very interesting.
And has that sort of feel, and we saw it in a lot of those movies.
So he was the first horror host I saw. His real name was Joseph Hart. But for some reason on the show, he said his name was Peter Hart, and he really played up his accent. He later acted in some low-budget direct-to-video horror films in Tulsa, but he would introduce, those movie packages that were really popular. I guess they started those either in the late 50s or early 60s, but that's what got my interest in science fiction started. So we had a lot of them were horror, and it was if memory serves, Saturday night, 10:30, so it would have been after the news. We usually didn't get to stay up late at my parents' at our house, so we used to ask to stay at my grandmother's house because she would, and then so it'd be me and my brothers and my sister and our cousins, and my grandmother would let us stay up late to watch these movies. And oftentimes,
she would.
Yes, what was really fun was this was a woman who used to read the True Detective magazines. So she was a character. She was awesome. But those movies were if they were a horror film, it would scare us too much. We would I still remember, I think it was one called Bride of Dracula or something. And the woman comes toward the camera and bears the fangs, and we ran out of the room. We can't watch anymore, kind of thing. But they also, in those shows, that was my introduction to science fiction, because I saw these old 1950s, atomic age science fiction films with astronauts on rocket ships going to other planets. There was later the CBS affiliate, Channel 6. There was another, this was in the 70s, a show called Mazeppa Pompazoides Uncanny Film Festival.
I've heard of that.
Gaylord Sartain was the host. He was on Hee Haw. You've seen him, he's in a bunch of Alan Rudolph films.
I remember Hee Haw.
Okay, most of Alan Rudolph did some interesting films, and Gaylord was in all of his movies. He was in The Grifters with John Cusack and Angelica Houston, and he was Angelica Houston's landlord.
I see.
He was also, I think, Fried Green Tomatoes. I think he was Kathy Bates' husband. But maybe a little bit more interesting to most people was one of the regulars they had on the show was Gary Busey.
Gary Busey.
Gary Busey is from Tulsa.
I love Gary Busey.
He played a character called Teddy Jacketti. And as a matter of fact, if you see the movie The Buddy Holly Story, which was his big breakthrough role, there's a scene where he's goofing around. I think a kid comes in the apartment and he's playing guitar, and he does a quick abbreviated version of "Well, all right," and he goes, Teddy Jack. He says in the lyrics, "Teddy Jack's going to be all right." So he did a little call out to that for the people from Tulsa who grew up watching, or maybe they weren't grown up, maybe they were teenagers or a little older, getting stoned or drunk on a Friday or Saturday night watching the Uncanny Film Festival. And
so it sounds like a lot of places had those sort of, the Elvira, Mistress of the Dark, hosting these films. We had this guy, his name was Bob Wilkins, and this is in the San Francisco Bay Area. He hosted a show called Creature Features.
Yep.
So I used to watch Creature Features, and it scared the stuffing out of me. They would play all kinds of music, and he had the sort of creepy house, and he had the big chair and the candle, which was inside a skull, and he had a big cigar. And he would play these movies like The Horror of Party Beach.
Mm-hmm.
And, when I was a kid, man, these things were terrifying. And then they started getting into other films like 20 Million Miles to Earth,
mm-hmm.
And I started to watch these films, and I loved them. And then then they started showing on weekends the King Kong versus Godzilla, a lot of the Godzilla movies.
Right.
Ultraman, Johnny Sacco and his flying robots. And I got into all this stuff as a kid. So I was digging the Japanese stuff way early when I was probably 8, 9, 10, 11 years old. And then got away from it when we came back to Canada. But that science fiction thing was always there. And it really hit hard with two films, Star Wars, of course. And then I think kind of its antithesis, which was Alien in 79. So it was those two films that really set me on the sci-fi trajectory. So when thinking about what to do on the podcast and what to talk about, that was something that I've always loved doing and never seemed to be able to find people to talk about it with, because a lot of people I don't want to talk about Godzilla. All right, I'll go do my own thing somewhere else. So now with our audience, we've got people who are super interested in all the stuff that we like to talk about. And there's been a really nice community that's built up around the Sci-Fi Movie Podcast. And I'm sure you're finding that too. You're probably finding lots of people coming out of the woodwork who are all kinds of into science fiction and artwork and cosplay and making video and short films.
Actually, what I'm finding that's kind of interesting, I attend a lot of internet marketing type meetups and there are a lot of social media, search engine optimization, video marketing experts in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. There's a very powerful brain trust. Some of the best minds in internet marketing on the planet are in Dallas, so it's kind of ironic that no one knows that since they're marketers. You would think everyone would know it. In any event, I go to these meetups and meetings, and everyone's asking, what do you do? And I mentioned that I have a science fiction podcast and website. and it's like a little dirty little secret. The people will catch me alone later. They don't want anyone overhearing this saying, "Oh, I'm a big science fiction fan," and men and women. I think I'm almost wondering if women are bigger science fiction fans than men. They just, other than doing cosplay, I think they tend to be a little quieter about it. I'm seeing, maybe there's the part, women, boy, it's really hard to say, but I'm seeing a lot more women that are very passionate about it. When I see people who are science fiction fans on Facebook, I have many friends, not fans, friends on Facebook. And a lot of the women who are into science fiction, that is a really big part of their lives. It can be cosplay or going to the comic book store on Wednesday or whatever day the new comics come out. And so there are a lot of women I see, and every Wednesday or Thursday, they'll do a picture of their haul from the comic book store saying, "This is my weekend reading." And they might buy 6 or 8 comic books pretty much every week. I don't see that many guys doing that, but it might be because I'm more interested in making friends with women than men.
Do you think that there are some changes going on in the way female roles are being portrayed now that we have had somebody like an Ellen Ripley and a Sarah Connor and Jessica Chastain, who was the commander of the mission in The Martian?
I think you're hitting the nail on the head. That was going to be my guess, and I think Ripley started it, and Sarah Connor. I remember when Terminator 2 came out, and I was in graduate school, and I had a professor in the department where I was a grad assistant, and it inspired her. The character just so inspired her, and she is a high performing professional. She's a college professor, but she just fell in love with the Sarah Connor character and started going to the gym and built herself up to where her physique was very much like Sarah Connor's. It was very, very interesting. And I saw other women kind of doing that. So I think Ripley, I think Sarah Connor, I think, Jessica Chastain. And now these are more, that's kind of interesting because Jessica Chastain's characters are a little bit more cerebral as opposed to physical, like Sarah Connor and Ripley. Right.
And looking at, I guess, the positions that they're in, and there's a comment here from Kyron. Kyron says, do you think that's because women are being encouraged more than men, AKA there isn't a stereotype for women in moms' basements reading comics, but there is for me? So,
well, there is for guys. Yeah, the loser. Oh, he's living in his mom's basement, reading comic books and not getting out. And there are those guys. Well, now I think it's shifted over a little bit to video games, but you see more now. Well, I won't go into Video Game Gate or whatever that was called. That was horrible. But, you get more women into the video games. And one of the reasons I would say that too, is when you go to Comic-Cons and you see the cosplay, many of the characters that women are dressed up in are video game characters.
Oh, okay. Okay. So they're choosing characters that they find, they're looking for characters that are female, but also empowering at the same time.
Yes. I mean, you'll get the ones more of the, you get the sexier, it's like they're little divisions in that world. I think it's mostly a supportive field or subculture.
I think too, there's also a tendency, I think what's great is women are adopting characters. And Movie Matthew, we're talking about women in sci-fi and women's attraction to sci-fi. I saw a compilation of some really good cosplay, and there was one woman who dressed up as Master Chief from Halo, and fantastic costume.
They're doing gender bent too. A lot of the women are dressing up now as male characters, and they call it gender bent or some similar term. I think the first I would see like Mario Brothers, they would do the Mario Brothers character, but now they're taking the more realistic kind of characters. There was Laura Croft. That was probably a big one. And a lot of women used to dress up. I don't see it as much now, but that was a very popular cosplay character for a while.
Yeah, it certainly was. I think Angelina Jolie was really good for that character. Do you think we're seeing more characters in movies now. Like I was doing a bit of reading, or actually a bit of watching, because we're doing The Martian tonight. But next week we're talking about 2 Mars movies: Mission to Mars with Gary Sinise and Connie Nielsen, and Red Planet with Val Kilmer and Carrie-Anne Moss. So in this movie, Carrie-Anne Moss is the mission commander. So I do see that I think they're starting to get it, that they can portray women in leadership roles. That's okay to do. But we still do see situations, especially if you look at the 2009 Star Trek, where you have Uhura, who is really relegated to being Spock's girlfriend, and that's about it. That representation of a woman in science fiction, in a science fiction role, as far as I'm concerned, Star Trek blew it on that one huge.
Yeah, they really did. And even when they, I thought Janeway wasn't the best character, for the different television spinoffs from Star Trek. I don't feel like they tried that hard. But Star Trek was created from a generation, from the late 50s, early 60s, Gene Roddenberry, and the shows that he was writing, those were very patriarchal television shows. And that's what they're used to, obviously. And Irwin Allen, all that stuff. They might have strong female characters, but the captain was always a man. Second in command was usually a man.
I like what we're seeing. Oh, you have to excuse me. I'm right next to the airport, and there's something big taking off right now. Well, I don't know if you watched The Walking Dead.
I have, yes.
There are a few characters in The Walking Dead, a few female characters who are really playing out well as very strong, very capable characters, and I like that. I think what we're starting to do now is we're seeing that in these kind of entertainment pieces, in these TV shows, and in these movies, the women are right there as capable as men, and in many cases more so. And I think that story is finally being told, and I think that's a good thing. There's still a long way to go, I think, but I would like to think that it's improving.
And this is men talking about women in movies.
Right. So have somebody jump on and talk with us who could represent the female side.
There, I'm seeing from Movie Matthew. He was talking about, first he says he is a movie themed man cave. Good for you. He also says something horrifying. There might be an Aliens 5, which really scares me. Star Trek 3 out 2016, end of July, not July 4th. And X-Files Blu-ray box set this year. And that's the other thing. I'll bet most of the box sets or most of the Blu-ray sales are from science fiction series, TV series or film series. A Star Trek, a Star Wars, X-Files,
Doctor Who, things like that.
Doctor Who, even quasi science fiction like Twin Peaks.
I'm curious to see how that's going to play out. I'm looking forward to seeing what Twin Peaks does, picking up 20 years or 30 years afterwards.
It's a lot.
Long time. But I got to tell you, I couldn't care less about the X-Files coming back. Are you looking forward to this? Were you an X-Files fan?
I was an X-Files fan the first 3 or 4 years, and I enjoyed the first of the 2 movies. I would have rather that they had done a movie. They never really did a great movie. The first one was fun. The second one was forgettable. And I enjoy watching the 2 of them, David Duchovny and
Gillian Anderson?
Gillian Anderson together. She's a really good actress. I thought it was very well cast. They created some good characters. Now, wasn't that shot in Canada?
Yes, Vancouver, I believe.
There we go. So, yeah. Or at least at the beginning, which they say that's part of the reason it's so dark looking, because the days were shorter and they just went with it. In any event, I'm more excited by the having Bruce Campbell as Evil Dead as Ash in Evil Dead coming back. I'm actually, because that's fun, I don't think it's going to take itself too seriously. X-Files, I kind of feel like they've probably covered, their story. It was a redo of the Night Stalker, which Chris Carter said that was his inspiration. I feel like they covered it. They really ran out of gas on that show, and so and I understand people liked seeing it, but I think maybe they're having selective amnesia about the final few seasons. But it started out so well.
Is anybody clamoring for more X-Files? I'm certainly clamoring for more Game of Thrones. I'm looking forward to The Walking Dead starting tomorrow night. But as far as the X-Files, do I need more of that? I don't really feel like I do.
Yeah, I'm going to watch it. I'm not super excited about it. Like I said, they were talking about doing more movies, and I thought that could be more interesting because you've got, you focus your budget and you make one really strong story as opposed to diluting it across several television episodes. They're very talented people worked on the show. It was always hit and miss, but there were some others. They did one where they were on the television show Cops. I don't know if you saw that. And they actually shot it like an episode of Cops.
Really?
And very, very entertaining. And really surprising. It was literally, the conceit was, for whatever reason, the FBI went ahead and let the producers of the show Cops follow Scully and Mulder on a case. And so it was an episode. It was a Cops episode. It was a 1-hour Cops episode as opposed to a 30-minute episode. But I mean, it was just a Cops episode capturing that story as opposed to an X-Files type production. So it was people with video cameras chasing them around. It's very, I mean, for all I know that the show Cops, they actually hire freelance crews wherever they go. They come to Dallas. They probably have people that they've worked with enough in Dallas that they can call and bring people in. But I've seen them go into other communities and make a call. Hey, we need videographers to chase these cops around as they do all this stuff. So I'm wondering if they really just used cops, freelancers, or people who worked on a lot of Cops episodes to shoot that, as opposed to the X-Files production team. I don't know.
It would probably give it that gritty, realistic quality instead of people who were used to doing very slick video work. Find the people who take that kind of footage and get them to do it. That would probably smack of more realism, I would think.
It was, yeah.
Matthew said he saw the first X-Files and the second one. This is going to be the 10th season for the X-Files.
Kind of surprising.
Wow.
Yeah.
And apparently he said Stephen King did an episode of the X-Files.
Yes, he did. Yes,
he did. Know that.
I cannot remember what the episode was about, but I remember him doing that show. I have the memory of watching the episode, although I cannot remember anything specific about that show. And one of the more interesting appearances that Dana Scully and Fox Mulder made was on The Simpsons.
Oh.
And they played those characters.
I like it.
That was pretty funny. The convenience store. Okay, I do remember the episode. I was doing the first blab I did, and I had Charlie Christine with me on that show, and the first one was just sort of free, whatever we wanted to talk about. It was just testing out blab, and someone had asked us in the comments what they thought the best science fiction television show was. And Charlie had been telling me before the show, she just very gamely came on the thing. She said, look, I'm not a science fiction fan. That's not in my wheelhouse. She's very intelligent. She's she's scary smart, but we get into some of the discussions and it turns out that yes, she is a closet science fiction fan.
I remember listening to that one. Was that the one where she said, was it The Outer Limits or
Twilight Zone, which didn't even occur to me, but as soon as she said it, it's like, well, you kind of have to say that's probably the best science fiction television show. So, I mean, as much as I love certain shows, Firefly and a few others, Twilight Zone is magic.
It absolutely is.
There's the best writers. And I think we talked about that a little bit in our interview. But
Yeah.
that really surprised me that she just didn't even hesitate. She knew right away that was the best show. But it turns out she knows quite a bit more about science fiction than she let on. And as a matter of fact, it's really funny. We did a blab Thursday night about cosplay photography. So this is for cosplayers. Like I said, they've spent all this time and money and effort on their makeup, making, buying, or having someone else make their outfit for them, doing their hair. They might have props and gizmos and so on. And they really deserve good pictures.
That's a good point.
You know what I mean? They're spending all this time, and then they end up with a selfie or just a cell phone picture or someone who doesn't really know what they're doing. The other side of that, there are photographers who would probably love to do cosplay photo shoots. And I've done a few of them. They're really a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. And so this was really kind of, okay, well, these are hints. If you're a cosplayer and you're looking for better pictures, what can you do? How can you find a photographer, or how can you do pictures just by yourself? And if you're a photographer, how can you find cosplayers, and what kinds of things can you do as a photographer to make better pictures? And so she's a professional model. She's a freelance model. And she did a photo shoot a year or so ago as Wonder Woman.
Okay.
And it was pretty good. And then about 2 months ago, she did a photo shoot. The photographer had created this steampunk outfit for her and did some really neat photographs of her steampunk outfit. And she really had a good attitude. And so I thought that was funny. So that was Thursday night. And then she left Dallas yesterday, Friday, and went down to, or was it today? Maybe it was this morning. In any event, she was in San Antonio either yesterday or today. She didn't know. It was a morning shoot with a photographer she hadn't worked with before, and she didn't really know the particulars about the shoot. And she gets there, and it was a cosplay shoot. So she did her third cosplay shoot, which is very interesting. So once again, I think this is, maybe this is early warning. We're going to see more cosplay. I mean, a couple of years ago, she hadn't even heard of it. And then she does a Wonder Woman. And she's had other people ask her to do cosplay photography. And I'm seeing on the websites that feature glamour photography or pinup type photography, I'm seeing more and more cosplay in there. And I even did a photo shoot last year with a fitness model. I had worked with her a few years ago, and I was really not paying much attention. We shot this in a park in Addison, Texas. And I didn't notice until, like I said, I was focused on getting good pictures. She figured out the wardrobe and so on. And I got back, and then I realized it was a little bit of a cosplay type shoot. She was wearing a little Superman.
Oh, I see.
Kind of crop top. I hadn't really noticed. It's like, I'm going to call that cosplay. I put it up on the cosplay sites, and there are these more and more cosplay sites. I do a lot of photo shoots, like I said, with these cosplayers. And when it's a good one, I'll submit it. There's one website called Geek Girls, geekxgirls.com. And they have published. They have shown two of my photos. They do 3 to 6 or 8 sets of photos every day, Monday through Sunday. Mm-hmm. And both of mine, they've gone ahead and put up, and I get a lot of traffic from that.
I'll bet. So the traffic points back to your site.
Well, what you do is the cosplayer writes a little blurb about their cosplay that they put in there. They do a really nice. It's her name is Dana something, who puts this together. She's also a photographer, and I think she might be a cosplayer as well. And like I said, so it's geekxgirls.com, and it's mostly female cosplayers, but it's GeekX Girls, but sometimes it'll be a mixed kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And the photography ranges from average to spectacular. I mean, some of the photographers doing this stuff are very talented, and they're focused on doing cosplay. And I've noticed The last time I submitted, it took about a month before. She accepts it really quick. She makes her decision very quickly and gets back and says, yes, I can use it. I love it. I'll put it out there and it'll be there within a month. And she said that in the second one, about a year later, but it took about 6 or 7 weeks, which I'm guessing that the backlog's getting larger. So she's probably seeing more and more pictures. And so I'm not really sure. Maybe it's just her website's become more well-known and popular, or if it's just are more people doing the cosplay photography.
I think you're probably right. It would make sense to me that there would be photographers at some of these cons. I could see how they would have an area set up to be able to get something lit properly with a decent background. If that's not happening already, that seems like a market just waiting to happen.
There are people who do that. I actually tend to go to the cons with my camera and a flash, and I can usually get a few. I'm still grabbing shots. They're not spectacular, but I can get better shots than because I'm using flash in a certain way. It looks a lot better than the typical grab shot that somebody gets at a Comic-Con. But that's really more, as I mentioned in the show Thursday, for the photographers. If you're trying to find cosplayers to photograph, go to a Comic-Con and you'll meet a couple of hundred.
So it would be a good way to get more experience in photographing, in doing that type of photography. Because I think with photography, I haven't done a lot. I tend to do headshots for my theater group. And it's something that the more I practice at it, the better I get. So it seems like somebody who is aspiring to get into photography could be a good place to go find subjects to shoot.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's wonderful. For me, I like it. I've shot a lot of models, and I've shot less experienced. I shot very experienced models who can pose all day long, just give you these amazing poses. And then I've worked with less experienced models who require a lot of direction to find good poses. And then occasionally civilians who don't even consider themselves models, which is often, quite honestly, not as much fun for reasons I won't even go into. But the cosplayers are having fun with it, and they're there for it. I mean, they really want to get some good pictures, and they will work, and they're willing to learn. So I have found shooting cosplayers to be very rewarding. And it's really fun, too, if it's the first shoot they've done and you manage to get a few really good pictures. They get very excited because they finally have some really good pictures. And that makes me feel better. It's kind of cool because you made this person really happy. You've given them something really cool.
And for every person you do that for, then there's the potential to get more traffic to your site. And you're also doing a service for other people who have put all this work into a costume, and now they're being captured in a way that really shows them as good as they can be. Yes.
And what they'll do is, like I said, like Geek Girls, what they'll do is they'll put the little blurb, or it can be longer. It's whatever the cosplayer writes. They tend to just put the whole thing in there. And then they'll put a link at the bottom for the photographer, and they'll put a link for the model. The model probably gets a lot more traffic, and it's usually to their Facebook page. It might be their personal Facebook page, or they might have set up a fan page for their cosplay. They might have a separate one to kind of keep it separate from their personal life. And I get quite a bit of traffic, but I'm pretty sure they're getting a lot more traffic than I am. But it's really one of the reasons I do it. I'm interested in building traffic to the website, to my podcast, but at the same time, it's something I really enjoy. And even because I was doing this before I had the podcast.
Okay.
So and the whole reason I'm doing it is my background is filmmaking. And a few years ago, I really wanted to improve the look of my videos. Okay, that's it. Oh, there's Bennett. I will get to Bennett here in a second. Bennett's our filmmaker.
Actually jump off here. I'm going to go get myself ready for The Martian, but it looks like you're getting ready to chat with Bennett. Bennett here?
Yeah, Bennett's here. I'm not sure why he hasn't come on. He's in the queue. This is where I'm just not that experienced with Blab at this point, but we'll get him on here in a second.
Sure.
But anyway, I really appreciate you coming on and talking. Like I said, REM's podcast is the Sci-Fi movie podcast. The show that they're putting out this week will be The Martian, and you don't want to miss that one. or as I call it now, since it's the same director as Prometheus, and Prometheus being your great white whale, your Moby Dick, as it were, I still wonder if he stumbles across the pilot from Prometheus, that he's on Mars.
I love that.
And it's like the prequel to Alien. Because it really started on Mars with this guy who gets stuck there, and he accidentally, in trying to reach Earth, he summons these aliens that cause all these problems. See, I think they all tie together in the.
That's a nice tie-in. I like that. I think that has good potential. We'll have to get in touch with Ridley Scott and bounce it off him. Maybe he'll make that part of one of the other Prometheus sequels. I guess he's got 2 in the works now.
I've heard that, and someday I'll tell you the story. I have never met Ridley Scott or Tony Scott. I know that they used the same crew, and I actually worked on a film with Ridley Scott's crew.
Oh, nice.
I spent a week working on a documentary that was nominated for an Academy Award, actually.
Makes sense. They do great work.
They do great work, and these guys stay together as a crew. And so if Ridley has a movie, they're working on his. If Tony, the late Tony Scott, had a movie, they would work on his. And I asked them about that, and they said they were very different directors, but they enjoyed the fact that they had the same crew, but they also tended to work on other projects. That was a real interesting story. I wish I had pressed them for more stories about Ridley Scott when I spent a week with them, but unfortunately I did not. I didn't see Prometheus coming. So maybe I could have said something that would have prevented it. But
who knows? Maybe the sequel, as my friend Roger says, maybe the sequel will make it all better.
Yeah, it'll be like the opposite of the Star Wars prequels. That somehow, in this case, when he makes the prequels, they will end up actually being better than. But that's hardly likely, since Alien is just that's one of my top 10. So
me too. How do you top Alien? I think Alien still stands out as my favorite. Probably that and Star Wars as my 2 all-time favorites.
In space, no one can hear you scream. Greatest.
Yep.
Tagline ever, in my opinion.
I saw that when I was a kid and I lost sleep. I didn't sleep that night after seeing Alien.
I saw it with my mommy.
Huh?
I saw it with my mommy.
Wow.
And Matthew
slept at all. Boy,
it scared us. It scared us well. In a movie, Matthew likes Aliens 2 or Aliens better, which I understand why a lot of people say that. But it's a different. To me, they're in the same universe, but they're
2 different
Aliens.
Films.
They're 2 different films. Like Alien is a horror film. Aliens is an action adventure film.
It is like Jim Cameron had said. Aliens is like a war movie.
Yes, very much.
It's war. And Alien had a completely different feel to it, but still, I love them both. I love them both.
I love them both too.
Well,
Ram,
thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it, and thanks
for
introducing me to this blab thing.
Yes, and we will be doing it every Saturday.
Excellent. Well, I'll hopefully be able to join you at some point in the future again.
And from now on, every Saturday, I will be checking that my microphone or my audio interface is working. The only way I have to check is to ask people, but I also realize I can look and see if the little light's flashing on my audio interface. So I'll learn to. That was embarrassing.
Well, you got it out of the way now, so.
Yes, I didn't expect the Charlie Chaplin version of a blab, but in any event, once again, it's been great talking to you, and I'm sure we will be speaking together again in the future.
I look forward to it. You have a good night. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Now, Bennett, can we get you on the air? Bennett, I don't think I have anything. I can give you props. Is there a button you can press or something so that we can get you live? There's let me see. Like I said, I can give you props. I can check your audio, but I can't really. I can't bring you on. You had mentioned. Oh, not sure you have a microphone. Are you using your desktop or your laptop computer as opposed to your phone? Or I think most computers would have a microphone on them, so you would probably be able to come on. It's a desktop. Oh, a desktop. It may not have a microphone. That's a good point. Well, we can still communicate. You can still type though, which is fine. That'll work. You're a writer now. Let's see. Tony is alive in another science fiction universe, which he could be. You know, I really he was a very different director than Ridley Scott. So, and I'm more of a Ridley Scott fan, although Ridley Scott does some things that, you know, like Prometheus was not my favorite movie. And you also mentioned Galaxy Quest, which is interesting because when Rem and I were talking about women's roles in science fiction and talking about Uhuru and how they're relegated to the girlfriend or the communications officer, so on, I thought that Galaxy Quest had a lot of fun with that. And of all people, Ripley. It was Ripley playing this character and complaining about the part where she just repeated whatever the captain said. That's the theme of Frackers. What is death if we're truly light beings? So, perfect cast. Now that's interesting. See, we had not really spoken, for those who don't know, Bennett Litwin is a writer and a filmmaker in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and he is making a film, a science fiction film called Frackers. And what I really find interesting about this is they were ready to start shooting some time ago, but stopped before they began because they really wanted to make sure that they had the script in the kind of shape that it needed to be in. In other words, it's the whole thing, I will shoot no film until the script is ready before it's time. And I am encouraged by the fact that they were willing to delay production until they had a script that they were happy with. And I know that the script has gone through a fair number of rewrites and permutations, some changes big, some small, although I have not read the script. We have only spoken about it in general terms. Okay, so he says 37th draft coming back from Hollywood tomorrow. Now that's pretty cool. 37th draft, great coverage, funny, good characters, plot tweaks. So now, did Frackers begin life as a comedy? Or was it a drama? How has it changed? Okay, the first 20 drafts were drama, and now it's a comedy. So what triggered the change from drama to comedy? Was it a scene that you wrote or some realization that someone had? Why did you switch from drama to a comedy project? I'm very interested. Hopefully he really does type fast. And we've got room for someone else to come on if they want to while we can multitask here. So better at comedy. So Bennett feels he's better at comedy. He's a very entertaining guy. And truly to open minds. Okay, if you want to open minds, it helps if they're laughing. In other words, you get their defenses down and they're more willing to consider maybe different ideas. They're not, their defenses are down, as it were, because it is a comedy. So you can get all kinds of things in there. Emotional experience is how we melt our barriers, sex, laughing, crying, which is true. I'd actually like to mention, I have tried writing screenplays and I write short films and I've read all the books. I've even taken college courses and workshops on screenwriting. I've met and talked to a lot of screenwriters from Hollywood. And I know the structure. I can talk about the 3-act structure if you believe in the 3-act structure. I can talk about Joseph Campbell's Hero with 1,000 Faces and how that works. And what I didn't realize, and you are talking about it here, is that the way that people experience a film, whether it's science fiction or anything else, is through emotions. In other words, you take them on an emotional journey. What they remember is how they feel or how the characters feel in the movie. It's not necessarily the plot twists and clever dialogue necessarily. So we have 2 out of 3. We are funny. So I should mention, they have a web series called Loaded, and I will create notes for this episode. This will be on the Sci-Fi Maker website, sci-fimaker.com. There is a blog in there, and I will have a blog for this for Blabs. Or I'm creating a a page for these blabs or these videos, and I'll have links to anything we're talking about in there. So, and it is a very interesting web series. I was not necessarily something you can watch at work or in an office. You better have headphones on and hope no one can see the screen. Oh, okay. He's going to get a camera and microphone for next time, which is that's fine. That's what like I said, there are no rules. We can do whatever we want to with blabs. So what's your start date? A few dick jokes in our buddy comedy. Yeah, there were a few. Yes, that's. I can't remember which was it, episode 3 or I remember when it started, because you don't get that necessary. Well, there's a little bit or hints at it, and then all of a sudden, oh, I kind of see where this is going, but it's not in the first episode. Oh yeah, the fertility clinic, and that was where I had to quit watching the web series in the office, unfortunately, but I did go back and watch it at home. There is, let me check my audio again. There we go. Right now, what are you looking at? Yes, I laughed. I did laugh out loud. And that's also a little bit embarrassing in an office environment. When are you planning? When is principal photography? We'll use the right term. When does principal photography begin now for frackers? And I'll let him type his answer. And then I will read it out loud. Okay, shooting in November. Okay, some insert scenes. So you're going to start with insert scenes, or would you call those like second unit type shots, or is that similar to what you shot out at your pool? So shooting in November, some insert scenes, then a few weekends. Okay, and then April, the main shoot begins, and I'm going to make every effort to visit the set and kind of report from there. So I'll be providing updates on this show. So once again, this show, the Sci-Fi Saturday show, is always going to be on at 8 o'clock Central Time on Saturday. We'll do it on Blab, at least for now. If Blab disappears, we'll find some other way to get it up online. Live Saturday, 8 o'clock Central, and I'll give updates as we go. I'm also going to be covering that in the Sci-Fi Maker Show. In the Sci-Fi Maker Show, I'll do short updates, and then from time to time, we'll do more of a feature-length show on some aspect of the project, because I think that's real interesting. I think, in other words, we're kind of using this to have an overarching story that we follow from pre-production through production and editing, post-production, until it's released, and cover that. I'm really excited that I got a chance to meet someone who is working on the film, and his timing really couldn't have been better for what we're doing. See, okay, so the insert shots that they're shooting in November, similar to the pool shots, yes, bikini with fracker teaser shoot, which I have some pictures. If you check out the Sci-Fi Maker website, I think I might have a picture or two. Yes, I do. As a matter of fact, if you go to the podcast episode number 2, so if you go to sci-fi-maker.com, click podcast, the second episode has a bikini shot if you're really interested, but it was at the pool. It shows that scene. Actual characters and editing that November footage for the feature. Okay. And yes, love the long ride of this project. Yeah, the timing was really good. It is kind of interesting how long this has been going on, and only pros need apply. Everyone so far is amazing. Now, who do you have now? You have a director of photography, has worked on some projects before. What kind of credits, or what kind of 3 years in the making and counting, which is fine. I have a project that I shot 15 years ago, and it still isn't edited, so I'm claiming that we're 16 years in the making. I'm sure that's not the record, though, and I will finish it as soon as I can. So can you talk a little bit about who you have working on the project? Let's start with the crew. Like I said, so that would be like your writer, your director of photography. Just a little bit about them, so we can get a little bit more of a sense of the kind of project this is. Okay, here we go. So Chuck Hatcher is the DP. That's the director of photography or cinematographer. Jeff Nicholson is the director. And now they were both at there for the pool scene. Is that correct? I think they were. And until he answers, let's see. So now let's talk about Adam Litwin plays, I guess, the male lead, and he's a very good actor. If you see the web series Loaded, you can see some of his work. I honestly thought he was Australian until I was informed otherwise. Chris Henson, Lisa Lafayette, I'm sure I'm mispronouncing her name, Marcus Ridner, and it was okay. And then it was written by Bennett Litwin and Adam Litwin, and Jeff Nicholson, the director, has directed 800 shorts. So first feature, great. Adam is the lead, yes, and interestingly, or at least this is interesting to me, an entertainment attorney in his day job. And I have a friend who had an entertainment attorney in Los Angeles years ago. He was working, it was some well-known monster characters that he was trying to get the intellectual property rights to, because apparently the studio, who will go nameless, supposedly never filed for a copyright. This goes way, way back when you had to file for a copyright. You don't have to file for a copyright now, but at the time you had to file for a copyright. And his entertainment attorney, he advises me, was Bela Lugosi Jr., the son of the actor Bela Lugosi. They didn't win the case. The studio supposedly may not have filed for the copyright, but the studio can afford to hire a team of attorneys and tie you up forever, so he does not own the rights to those movie monsters. Adam's the lead. Okay. Nicholson. Oh, Will Nicholson, CG, computer-generated effects. 30 feature credits, including Spy Kids, Mummy, Iron Man 2. Wow, that's very impressive. That is very impressive. Networking has been fun, and keeping costs down with excellent. Okay. Yeah, Bela Lugosi Jr. Have no idea how good of an attorney he was. I've done a little bit of searching on Bela Lugosi Jr. and I haven't really found any information about him. So Bennett has not done, I don't think he did any crowdfunding for Frackers. And so he's having to fund it, which has got to be fun, but he's very smart. And so, yes, he is doing things to keep costs down. He's getting some free marketing from me, and I am more than happy to provide as much marketing as I possibly can through my podcast and everything else. I see someone else has just joined the podcast. Welcome to the Blab. Selassie, I think is the name. And that's right. And I think Bennett and I had spoken about that. He had decided against crowdfunding, and you're welcome. I'm more than happy to do any kind of promotion for Frackers that I possibly can. I want to feel like I contributed a little bit to it. Plus, I just like Bennett. Bennett's a really great guy, and he was on the second podcast episode that I did for Sci-Fi Maker. Second? Yeah, he was the first interview I had on the podcast, and we recorded that in my car. So we did it in our mobile studio, and he was very kind to put up with me on that. Like I said, if anybody wants to throw in a question or a comment, you're more than welcome to. Like I said, if you want to join in on the show, if you want to pop in, you've got a camera and microphone on your computer, you're more than welcome to join in. The second interview, it was a lot of fun. I try to do my interviews on the podcast live when I possibly can. I don't really like doing Skype calls or questions about Frackers. Well, okay, can you tell us a little bit more about the story, or what can you tell us about Frackers, the motion picture? Maybe that's what it should be called if you're going to rename it Frackers, the motion picture. And let's see, I see Ed Plott has joined. Welcome, Ed. Interesting picture. And oh boy, let's see. Type. Okay. Okay, now this is interesting. Very Twilight Zone-ish, and I'm a huge Twilight Zone fan. Our protagonist dies in the first act, but does he really? So is this a film that touches on what happens after you die? I sort of know the answer to this question. And I find that an interesting thing. I always think of it would be interesting to do. I'll probably do, I should mention, I like doing short videos, comedic short videos. And one of the things I'd kind of like to explore is a character who has died and the possible scenarios, what that person might experience after they die. Are they walking around the earth and they're invisible? You can't see or hear them, kind of like the movie, the Patrick Swayze Ghost. Is it something like that? Okay, so back to Bennett's film. So he dies in the first act, but does he really? He goes to a summer camp and has to be convinced. He's a science teacher. Spiritual, not very religious, sci-fi explores, but doesn't answer the huge questions. Okay, I think maybe, and I think one of the big, we haven't spoken about that. That's one of the big attractions, I think, for a lot of science fiction fans, as well as people who create science fiction, is that science fiction gives you this wonderful place to play where you can explore the big questions. Certainly Twilight Zone did that. I mean, they could be social problems. They could be bigger questions of why are we here? What happens after we die? Which is something that sounds like you're exploring. Connection to others. Art grows the soul, not the intellect. Underlines it. Yes, a funnier Twilight Zone. And some of the funnier Twilight Zones made some of the deeper points. As you mentioned, when people are watching a comedy, they let their guard down, and they might be more accepting of challenging ideas that they wouldn't consider in a drama because their defenses are up. Oh, and he said, maybe this should be, I think you just wrote the tagline for the movie. We're deep and have dick jokes too. Frackers, we're deep and have dick jokes too. I like that. You may not, but maybe that explains why I'm not making a living as a marketer. Like I said, anybody can jump in with some questions. We'll be happy to answer all of them. I get a little tired of just hearing my voice, but luckily, like I said, we've got Bennett. Okay, so now this is interesting. I had a friend, comedy is risky, science fiction is risky. So, hey, why not make it a musical too and go for the trifecta? That would be 3 times as risky. A comedy, science fiction, and a musical. Oh, they have a song and dance routine. So there we go. It's all there. Everything you would want in a risky film project. But that's exactly the kind of thing that I'd want to see. I did not know that until now, but I think that's awesome. Well, like I said, one of the things I like to do, or the science fiction that I want to create, that I want to put out in the world, are more the short form science fiction, and I want them to be comedic. My thing is on gender roles in society. In other words, if I have a theme on mine, if you're looking for something to give it all away, I'm giving away the big secret here, is you'll usually find in mine, there is a male character trying to take advantage or objectify or something similar of the woman character. And when they do so, things go very badly for them. I'm kind of this whole thing of the way that women are treated in the media and in society, how we view women, with women being strong, or are they not strong, or is there a war of the sexes, all that stuff. I'm not trying to definitively answer it. I'm just trying to explore different facets of it using science fiction and comedy as just contributing something to the discussion, because I'm not smart enough to come up with an answer to these questions. I just kind of want to point out certain things that I'm noticing so that people can take away what they want, but also if they want to talk about it or it starts a dialogue, I think that's That's fantastic. Song and dance, some surprises. My wit and questions. Yeah, I don't feel that witty today. I just don't have the energy. I've had a very long day. I went to a science fiction convention that wasn't there, and that was a weird thing to happen. That I was. That was kind of interesting to go to a place and not. Where are the cosplayers? I don't see them. And I'm trying to think too, and this is something else we can talk about if we want to talk about me a little bit more too. And let's see, good QT advertising. Oh, I am from Tulsa, and Quick Trip is headquartered in Tulsa, Oklahoma. That's the closest thing to civilization to where I live is the Quick Trip convenience store that is 3.1 miles away. And that's just water, by the way. But yeah, doing these, I was thinking about another film project of some kind. And like, I think some of you watching, like I said, you've seen some of the other videos that we've done here, or the blabs, and Charlie Christine has been in 2 of them, and sadly she's not in this one. We did a video called Date with an Alien that talks about that. It has to do with the conceit, or the idea behind it is aliens have landed on Earth, and we don't really know much about them, but in this scenario, we've more or less kind of accepted them because I guess we've decided we can't possibly defeat them. And in this short, it is exactly what the title says, the first date with an alien. This is the first human to go on a date, a social date with an alien. And so they go out on a date, and we kind of play with what's happening. And I think so the alien is male, or, well, I guess what we would think of as male. And Charlie plays the woman on the date. And so certain things happen. I won't give it away. We shot it a couple months ago. I have not had time to edit it, and it won't really take all that much time for me to edit it. And I've hopefully have learned a few things. I did a video